owner's agent. Herco is kind of the business of helping clients navigate the design process, do feasibility, and get through the permitting process. If we've done that successfully, then we typically manage the construction process also. So that's been our role in working with the city, and we appreciate the cooperation and all the help and good working relationship that we've been getting from.
Could you turn on your microphone?
Oh,
There's a button on the bottom there, sorry.
oh, there we go. That's my involvement, or our company's involvement. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about the property owner. He's a 31-year seasonal resident of Harbor Springs. He also owns other buildings in the downtown area, in addition to the 289 Main Street. And I can say, his genuine priority from the day we first met him, which was two and a half years ago, was to design a building that aligned with the downtown and architecturally aligned and complement the other buildings downtown. So he's made a few runs at this, was never satisfied, and so we continue to work on that. And we do believe now we do have something. Of course, everybody's entitled to their opinion on any building design, but we feel like what we put forward is accomplished, and he feels that way of what his original vision was. With the input we received last month's Planning Commission, we now think we have the plans that meet the requirements of the zoning code and the city code. So I'm going to introduce our architect of record. Mike Patel is going to come up and go over some of those changes that has been made by his group. We're pleased to have Mike as part of our team, and I'm sure many of you know him already. And so Mike, thank you. No problem. Thank you.
Mike Patala with Shoreline Architecture from Petoskey, Michigan. And yeah, we're the architects of record on the project. And out of the last meeting, there were several things that were just absent in the didn't complete the application. So some of that is housekeeping that we cleaned up in terms of they need an additional benchmark to validate the building height requirements, and we took care of that. There's some question about the percent glazing fronting on the public way. We took care of those items. We misunderstood. We were thinking, for whatever reason, Main Street and not the whole frontage from the Gardner Street. And so I saw in John's comments that we still need to address the Gardner Street side, and we'll do that. There's still certainly need to do that. The landscaping plan was provided. We're covering 88% of the lot. So there's not a lot there, but what is there on Gardner Street is fully landscaped along that side, trying to soften that up. There was a photometric drawing requirement for the lighting. We provided that. And as John pointed out, there are a couple of lights that need to be adjusted to get the light levels together now. And those will be done, in conjunction with city staff to make sure that the final plan meets that requirement. And then the biggest change was the garage, the first level. We had a lot of feedback on what were the private garages that were initially proposed. And so those have been changed to a common garage with a single entrance off of 3rd Street, and then the exit comes out on Gardner Street. And so cars can just loop through there. It's one way, so one way in, one way out. So there's no backing up out onto the sidewalks. It meets the visibility requirements at the garage doors. It puts 10 car spaces in there, along with room for bicycle racks and trash totes. That sort of thing can be accommodated in there as well. And it allows the parking to remain, with the exception of one space where they're on Gardner Street, where they're exiting the garage. The rest of those spaces would stay in place, where the previous version, those private garages were requiring too many parking spaces to be eaten up in order to get in and out of those garages. So that's the biggest change. But we kept the private, or not private, but the standalone, residential entrance is still on Gardner Street, to access the 6 unit residential units. And then there's also a service entrance for the commercial spaces also on Gardner Street. And then of course the main entrance, for the commercial entrance on Main Street. But those are the biggest changes that we wanted to point out. The configuration of the building, the look of the building, has largely stayed the same, with the exception of, we got rid of a bunch of garage doors. All right, quick. Mostly it's here to answer questions.
I have a question. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
Oh, hi.
Well, that's
They haven't opened it up for public comment yet.
There is no public.
Yeah, sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the planning commission, any questions on your part? Yeah. If I could start us out with some questions. You said your name was Mike, right?
Yes.
Mike, you said there's 10 spaces, or are there 9? If I get later documents.
Oh, maybe it's 9. Maybe I'm
Yeah, it
counting.
looks like the documents say 9, but you just said.
Maybe,
10.
maybe it is 9. 6 and 3, that's 9. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's 9 spaces in the garage.
You're, use the one. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Can I ask another one? Absolutely. Is there a way, or how do you see the condo ownership managing the west side wall for future repairs and maintenance? Or I guess it's the east side wall of that. Yeah, the west side wall of that building.
I mean,
There's a
it's,
5-foot, it looks like distance between the 2 buildings. Is that something, I'm sure you considered it, but does that make sense?
we held it back enough so that you could get in there and do something if you needed to, versus going right to the lot line and giving yourself less room. So we held it off a little bit so you could get back in there and do something if you needed to.
So they could replace windows on that building.
They could replace the
siding.
window, they could replace the siding, they could do whatever they need to do in there. Even if just cleaning it out, if it needs to be cleaned out, we're gonna run a drain down in there with stone to capture primarily the water that's coming off of the adjacent building. That building roof slopes to this property line. So that water needs to be captured, and rather than relying on them to do it, we're just gonna say, look, we're just let it go to the ground, and we're gonna pick it up with drain tile on this property within that space. So it allows that to happen as opposed to all that water coming down and hitting what?
Yeah, thank you. That was my third
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so the water for this building will be captured within the building roof and taken down to the, to the retention, the stormwater retention system. But somehow that water coming off of the adjacent building needs to be addressed. So that's how we're doing it.
Vanessa,
So you said that the water's going to be captured from the Lyric Theater, you're gonna put it in a drain and you're gonna put it where?
It's whatever water that, if they're not gonna manage it, then we need to capture it.
Okay, but where are you gonna put it? Where's it going?
It goes into the retention system.
Into your retention system?
I would assume they have to, I don't think they have one.
Okay, so you don't have plans on that one, so we don't know how that drainage is. And my question is, and not an observation, but my question is this is an MDOT road? Has MDOT seen these plans, and is MDOT aware of the work that's going to be done in their right of way and your connection to their drainage system?
No, not at this point. And that's not uncommon, but no.
Related question about the drainage. With the cars, the private garage, there's somebody that's gonna wash their car in the wintertime, there's salt, all that stuff. So for a novice at water control, where does that water that's been tainted with the salt and everything, where does that go? Into the same water system?
It would, I mean, if we could put a, I can't think of the name of it, but basically a catch basin in there that would basically create a weir that would capture that. But yes, it would go into the same system as any other stormwater.
other questions?
Yeah, one of the, some of the feedback we got from Megan Grader was that the transparency.
Microphone.
Okay, Don. Okay, that the, all buildings for first floor non-residential uses shall maintain transparency for at least 70% of the first floor facade. That's not being met on the Gardner Street side.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned. We were only thinking of it in terms of the Main Street side when we originally addressed it. We weren't thinking about the Gardner Street side, so that's something that we will adjust and put it up to the 70%. It was an oversight on our part to not address the Gardner Street side. We only addressed the Main Street side.
So that has not been addressed.
No, not yet.
To that question, I was trying to find the dimension, what is that span between Main Street and Third Street? What is
We
that?
have to look at the site.
166.
136.
166. So where I'm trying to go, just because I'm a math nerd, is you're at 56% of the transparency. And it needs to be at 70. I appreciate the fact that you want to do something about that. So that's 14% of 166. So that's
It's
20 feet.
it's 14% of the commercial portion of that. So it's only that first commercial piece, and we have quite large windows there now. We can add more.
Okay.
So it's just the first, I don't know what the depth of those units are, but those commercial units.
Okay, so just ballpark number, unofficial number, what kind of a span are we talking about that you would be increasing it to? You know, additional, what, 8 feet? And
No, not even that. It's probably a couple feet more of glazing to get there.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Your questions, yeah, so one of the, you were raising the issue of the west wall. And right now, the west wall is a pretty plain wall, when you look at it on blueprints, there's no demarcation or horizontal or vertical demarcation on that wall. And originally I thought, okay, well, it's gonna be covered by the Lyric building anyway, so what difference does it make? But when you provided this diagram here and showed us where the roof line of the Lyric is, there's probably gonna be about 9 feet of that west wall that's gonna be exposed to pedestrians on Main Street. That is gonna look very plain, very, very blah. And it strikes me as I thought about it, because we've all had 30 days to think about this project now, since the last meeting, it strikes me that. Number one, our ordinance says that you have to provide demarcation on all walls, regardless whether it's blocked by the Lyric Theater or not. Number two, if you didn't want to provide that sort of demarcation, then you should have at least come for a variance on that wall, which I don't believe you've done. So that's a concern to me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I really don't, other than that, and maybe it requires a variance to do it, is that within a central business district, it's not uncommon to have those requirements on frontage sides of a parcel. But on a common wall, I mean, historically, that would have been one party wall that both lots would share. And so that was kind of the thing.
I understand, and I understand how you would arrive at that assumption, but the ordinance says you have to provide demarcation on all walls.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Frank.
No, I don't want to keep talking, but. Help me understand, I looked at the documents and maybe I couldn't see them that clearly. How would a commercial garbage pickup manage the refuse for the whole building? Is it picking up garbage from the Gardner Street side or the Third Street? And if so, it's mentioned something about an alcove? Can you help us understand how that process would work? I can't
Yeah, so
imagine them just leaving garbage out.
No, the idea is that it's done with totes, so the residences each have their totes. And those will come up to the curb like any other trash removal for
So
residents.
which, would they be on all residents take it and commercial? Those two retail places, would they be taking that garbage to the Gardner Street side or the Third Street side? And whichever side it is there a designated place for those totes?
No, we haven't designated that yet. No, but there is a spot, for instance, within the units, not when they're taking it out within the garage, there's spots designated for the totes for the residents and for the commercial. And the commercial alcove is off of Gardner. So that likely is that's where that would stay. In terms of where it's gonna be on that street, I don't know. I don't think until they get involved with the trash collector as to how they actually want to do it.
Okay, and that's kind of where I was going. I was trying to visualize with a GFL type big truck, be stopping and picking up refuse on Gardner, Third, or both. And would there be confusion between retail and residents as to, well, we put our totes here, but there really isn't a place to put them? And if I'm retail, that assumes I go to Gardner?
I don't know, to be honest with you. In terms of how they bring the totes out and where they put them, I don't know.
But you're saying the totes, the places they would be, if I couldn't really see this, I'm sorry, but is it here?
Yeah, so that's an alcove where they can set the totes for the commercial portion. So that's just for the commercial.
Here for
Right,
commercial?
yeah, just some commercial totes. Because again, this would not work if it was a restaurant or something, but being, small retail spaces, they're not gonna have the kind of thing that a restaurant.
Mhm.
So they would have totes in that alcove. And then within the garages, adjacent to each space, they have totes.
Oh, so within these, you're saying, this is where the totes would go?
Yeah, for those, and the same on the other side, on the west wall, there's totes identified there as well.
Got it.
They're not pick up.
No, for pickup, like I said, it's not storage.
Yeah, that's just where it's stored.
Yeah, it would get rolled out like any other residential
Okay,
pickup.
yeah, thank you.
Is it inconceivable that a restaurant might be an occupant of one of those retail spaces or ground floor spaces?
Not the way the building's currently configured. The trash will only be one issue. I mean, there's really no accommodation for makeup air or commercial hood exhaust.
But it's
or-
permissible in the ordinance.
It's permissible in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
There would have to be a lot of modifications made in order to pull that off.
I have a couple more.
Yeah.
And we appreciate this. I realize it's like 8-1 here, but I appreciate your answers. You had mentioned during your opening that there are a couple of lighting elements that are too bright beyond the requirement, but you intend to knock those down or get them within spec.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And did the height of the building change from the previous version we saw last month?
No, what it did is they didn't have the benchmark at each end of the building identified on the plan, the elevation, benchmark elevation. They had it on the Third Street side, but not on the Main Street side. And so that was added to the plan so that the building height could be calculated per the city requirements.
Okay, so it was a method of calculation difference.
It was a data point missing in order to do the method of calculation.
Okay.
And so benchmark added that, and then they were able to do the calculation and verify that it was in
Okay.
compliance.
And so what is the height of the building now? It's
34 feet, 4.5 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does the roof look like? I didn't see any renderings of the roof. And where I'm going with this is what's sticking up, how high, and where would it be located versus the requirements to have it set back from the edge?
We haven't designed the HVAC systems yet. We're not that far, but it would be, I think you're allowed 42 inches. And so it would certainly be, whatever it is, it'll be within that envelope that's permitted. But the HVAC has not been designed,
And what about the elevator? Is there some mechanism that's going to be sitting on the roof for that?
There would be a mechanism, though. There might be an overrun that would be up there.
Normally, how tall are the?
It varies. It depends on the elevator, but maybe a couple feet.
Yeah, those are still limited to 44 inches.
Yeah.
So it looks like you can get everything still to fit
Oh,
within
yeah.
the confines.
Yeah, no, that's still the intention to do it within that requirement. We don't need to come above that, those envelopes, those are the city defined envelopes for any reason.
Okay, my last question is really in the weeds. I was looking at last month's submission and this month's submission to see if there was any drawing number, date, or code change, to the number of the drawings. And I didn't see a number on the previous version from last month, and that's fine. But I happened to notice that there were two different numbers that were assigned to this project on the different sheets that you had. And it could be a different company that submitted it or something, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Is two different sheet numbers or date numbers or?
Well, the project number was different. on one sheet versus another sheet within this package. And it struck me as odd.
That is odd. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah. Do you change the project number like from last month's version to
No.
this month's version? You don't?
No.
Okay. All right,
There
so,
could be, a revision number.
okay,
Maybe that's what you were looking at. There would be multiple revision numbers.
possible, but it looked like a different structure. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it. But I'm happy to show you the detailed
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
afterwards.
no, we don't change the project numbers, but every release has a version number.
Okay,
So that as people are communicating about the project, they know
Yeah.
they're looking at the same thing. So
Yeah.
over the life of the project, there'll be many different drawings that are issued with different, information added or deleted.
sure.
And so there's a version number that's put on with a date so that everybody knows when they're talking that they're looking at the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, in the future, if we have another discussion like this, if you could just make sure that we're all talking the same version. So-
Yeah.
so-
Yep. And I'll check the project number thing to make sure that isn't, I don't know what that would be, but I think it's a version.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to share that with you, so you can Jesus. Okay, thank you.
It does look like there's two different drawings for the parking. One is 9 and one is 10. So just if you can get something consistent of how many parking spots will be in.
There was more than one first floor plan issue.
In this packet, one shows 9 spots, and then another where in the drawing, it shows 10.
Okay. It's 9, but yeah, well, I'll check that.
Planning commission members, are we comfortable with the questions?
It's your photometric sheet. The photometric sheet shows 7 and 3, and where your other floor
Oh,
plan
okay.
sheet shows 6 and 3.
In fact, when we sent that base drawing to the electrical engineers, it was still a 10 spot plan. And so we sent them the base drawing and subsequently changed to 9, but they never got updated base drawing.
So 9 spots is what it is.
Yeah, and so and probably never got addressed because it wasn't really critical to what they were doing. From a lighting standpoint, it was more making sure that the plan itself was right. And if I remember right, the reason it happened was just getting the turning radiuses to work inside that garage.
Okay.
At 10 spaces, it became too tight. And so we eliminated a space in order to get the turning radius to work a little more comfortably.
Anything else? Great. Okay, so this is not a public hearing. And despite the fact that it's not a public hearing, I opened it up to comments from the community at the last meeting. Honestly, at this point in time, we've had an increment of 30 days to think about this. We've had several fairly significant changes to the site plan. And I'm more interested, with all due respect, more interested in what the planning commission members feel about this at this point in time. And I'd like to go around the table and just ask the planning commission members to make comments or express concerns about the project.
Me, we're starting with me.
Why not?
Why's Chip looking at me? Okay, I'll stay in my wheelhouse. You guys like it when I'm in the wheelhouse, right? The drainage plan doesn't work. So it's supposed to be retention. And so that means you have to retain it. And the way that the grades work in the perforated pipe, that the water is going to run. And they don't maximize the storage that they say they're going to maximize in the pipes and the pipes that they have sized when it can never use the entire pipe to then store. So their drainage plan does not retain.
Are you referring to the drainage that would come off of the Lyric building?
No,
Okay,
I
just
just
making
learned
sure.
about that tonight. And by the way, they do have to give us a drainage plan to approve that's part of the submittal, so.
Yeah.
That's new, haven't seen it. What I'm saying is that their storage, they're storing in pipes. And their pipes are not in the proper elevation to work. I think that it is simple to lower the pipes to the correct elevations, but when it was designed, it did not happen. I think that they simply looked at the existing elevations and then put 3 foot of cover over it and then had it go down. So that is a little concerning because they're not holding the water that they're supposed to hold, which then comes to the issue of the large flow rate that is going into and across MDOT's right away at 7.69%. That is absolutely booking at that point and not good design because of it. Section AA, which is on a drawing, does not match the plan view, which makes it even more difficult to understand what is going on with this plan. I've spent a lot of time on it and I'm still confused. So I really, and now we've got more drainage that's coming in and we don't know where it's getting connected to. And I guess the reason why I asked about MDOT is because if someone would have said MDOT loves this idea, I would have been, oh, well, all right, but it's an MDOT road. It's there right away.
Thank you.
I'll go next.
Okay.
Again, thank you for the answers. The lighting that exceeds the amount, I trust that you're going to correct that. The rooftop detail, I wish it was there, but I can see that there's a path forward to make it comply. So again, we'll have to trust that goes forward, and that'll be a condition of the final permitting, of course. The transparency falls short, but I now realize it's only a few feet. It's not significant, so that's something that could be corrected. Drainage, you know more about it than I did, but it sounds like that's a concern. The west wall, again, I'm not fully comfortable or understanding all those issues, but it sounds like that may have some significance to it. The other thing that I was going to bring up is the parking. As I mentioned last month, I'm not a fan of enclosing a bunch of private residential parking in the CBD, but I realize that there's some allowances for that in the code. But there is something that I found. It's the table in section 6.2.2. And John, I don't know if you have your book or I got it here, Ken. It talks about dwelling units when there are 2, 3, 4, or 5 or more. I know this one is 5 or more. And in that condition, that means that there's a maximum of 1 parking spot per dwelling unit, which would force this project to limit the number of parking spots to 6, I believe. And that if there's a way you could take a look at that, it's a concern the way I read the code. And if there's any way that you could think about trading some of those parking spots back off to add more retail, I would certainly like to have you go in that direction if you can. So this parking thing is to me, although you've made significant changes, and I appreciate that for the intermixing with people, but I feel like it needs to go further to the basic code. So there are several concerns sort of adding together here. And I would say the drainage, the west wall, and then the concern with parking are the most significant in my mind.
Others?
Okay, it works. I have a more basic concern. And I appreciate Mike's information and what he brought to us. I read and I listened to the city council meeting on June 4th. And I read in the Harbor Light the week of June tenth through the sixteenth that, and I'll quote, city clerk Nick Whitaker said that he had a brief discussion with city attorney Jim Raymer, and that he believes that so long as the site plan was not already approved, it could be, Jim Raymer, it could be impacted by the moratorium. So my confusion, or maybe my concern, not confusion, is how do you make a decision on this when we don't even have a legal opinion? We've had opinions, but we need a legal opinion on whether we can even vote on this. Whether you're for it, against it, or have no comment. How do you go forward when we don't even know if we can go forward? So that's my concern. I can't see how we can't get Mr. Raymer's opinion before we make any decisions. That's my take.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that concern as well. It still sounds to me, notwithstanding that, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. I don't see how we vote on this at all tonight. Table it until they get back more information. Still way too many unanswered questions for me.
Yeah, I agree with Chip, it's incomplete, I mean, for us to vote on something that's incomplete just doesn't make sense right now. In my opinion.
Mark,
I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with everyone, including Vanessa, who's the expert on our drainage. And when you build a project like this big, drainage is real critical, more than almost anything else. And then the west wall architectural design. And I'm not sure about the parking, but I would say the west wall architectural design and the drainage are two issues that we really need to see addressed.
Well, as it relates to the parking, I mean, you guys have all taken a crack at the parking.
Jeannie?
I'm sorry?
Well,
Oh,
my, Vanessa, obviously, your wheelhouse is much stronger than mine. Where my wheelhouse is more the local girl. And I'm confused by, under reduced standards, all elements of the site shall be harmoniously and efficiently designed in relation to the topography, size, and type of land, character of the adjacent properties and the proposed use. The site shall be developed so as to not impede the reasonable and orderly development or improvement of the surrounding properties for uses permitted on such property. And the comments are, it's satisfied, and it goes on because it falls within zoning. But it's subjective. In my mind, I guess I need some clarification on how it fits with the rest of downtown. As far as buildings nearby, across the street is obvious. But with the church and the Lyric, does it really fit in with the surrounding properties?
thank you. And so I'm gonna attack the parking question from a slightly different perspective, and honestly, it has taken me 30 days. And the reevaluation of these site plans and the submittal to come to this, what I'll characterize as a concern. And I think my fundamental question, my fundamental concern is, can you have residential parking units on the lower floor of a building in lieu of a commercial use? And doesn't that expand the residential use onto the first floor, which is not permitted? Which is not permitted. My concern is that the first floor residential parking or residential use as it is it is a residential use as it is enclosed within the building and is for use exclusively by residents. And as such, I think it's a residential use. And if it was just me, I wouldn't pay any attention because I never pay attention to myself. But the city attorney also shares that concern. Others?
So just summarize what you said. So by having residential use on the first floor, that is not allowed within the code.
That's how it feels to me.
So this isn't in compliance.
That's how it feels to me.
No.
It's been.
But first off,
That changes everything.
Talk drainage.
That changes everything in my opinion. The city attorney agrees with that.
But the city attorney, I want to make this clear, it's not an opinion.
Right.
It is a concern.
I would agree that the fact that you're parking your car on the ground floor is a residential use. And it's not allowed in the code. Can I make a motion? Or is it too early?
We can keep discussing after your motion.
Okay, I move we deny the application.
Go ahead a
I
second.
would second that.
Is there time for discussion?
This is the time.
Microphone. I'm
Just fuck this up.
That's my job.
I'll do a good job.
Okay.
Following Chip's motion, does that mean, denying and asking them to try to rectify this? I'm not sure where that puts us. Denying, and then what's the next step?
They would have to, my understanding, John, Jeff, is that they would have to come back with a completely revised
A new submission.
submission.
In the past, we gave people the opportunity to defer and then come back with something. I don't know if that's something that we want to offer as well.
Better give me the microphone.
You have to hold the button down.
I've got to provide the planning commission with some advice here. You've got several things going on. You have a 90-day moratorium on any other buildings in the downtown that are 2-story or greater than 2-story or 30 feet. If you deny the application, which is your prerogative, my concern is, and this is something I would have to talk to the city attorney about, is their application void? Do they have to comply with the moratorium? Or do they have, because they did submit an application that was denied, can they come back with a revised application? These are a couple of at least legal concerns that I have that I want to advise the planning commission on. The other issue that I think you should be aware of is that when planning commissions make decisions, they set precedent. Okay? I'm not totally in agreement with the city attorney's opinion about parking as a land use. Parking is an activity. It's not technically a land use. It's a requirement in the zoning code as a design element in Article 6. The fact that somebody is putting parking, and I'm just talking as a big picture here. If someone puts parking in a building on the first floor, what's the difference between putting parking on a surface lot that serves a second floor residential unit? That could be setting a precedent to other businesses or other buildings downtown that have occupants on the second floor where their property owners have parking, surface parking for them behind their buildings. So you could be setting a precedent where that's never going to happen again in Harbor Springs. So you're never going to have the ability if somebody really questions what you're doing. So I just want you to be careful on the decisions that you're going to make. I think you've got a couple of different decisions that are kind of, to me, kind of overlap and have some legality to them that, you know, maybe the best course of action for the PC. You can deny it, that's your obviously that's your right. Other course of action would be to table and then ask the city attorney for opinions on both of the issues. As you said, Mr. Chairman, Jim's observation was an observation, not a legal opinion. You're basing a decision on the attorney's observation, not legal opinion. I just want to advise you that you need to be cautious when you make these type of decisions like this.
I appreciate that, thank you. As it relates to the whole issue of parking, if it's outside parking, it's not encompassed in the first level of a building, and I think that's really the issue that we're talking about. If we're talking about within the confines of the walls, that parking is a first level use. As opposed to an outside parking lot. So you know, respectfully, I understand your point, but I think it's apples and oranges.
Okay, so, but can we get it to the next step from the attorney? Can we go from just an opinion to, I mean, I don't wanna get us in a pickle. I mean,
No, I think you're right, Vanessa. I think we need two things. One, we need to know. And I appreciate your point, John, because it's great, and I think Mr. Buckner was clear. There was no legal opinion, it was just.
right,
But I'm going back to what Mr. Whitaker said, which is, we need to find out if we can even take a stand in this moratorium period. So, I mean, this is all good discussion, but if we can't take a stand yet, doesn't mean we can't, won't. It just means we can't take a stand, approve, deny, because it's in that period. We need to get that opinion, legal opinion from Mr. Raymer. Does that not make sense to the commission?
so there's two legal opinions we need,
Well, and
parking
and the
and
parking, yes.
moratorium.
But the bigger picture to me is, hey, if you're falling within the moratorium, it doesn't even matter. You can't make a decision if he's saying this falls within that. So I want to be respectful to the applicant and say, okay, what are we allowed to do? As well as, hey, we have some concerns that need to be addressed. And you know, they'll address those somehow. But we need to get Mr. Raymer's opinion on this, I think, as far as the first level, and then yes, the parking as well, but to me, that's a secondary level.
Yeah, I could change my motion. I'm not as worried about the, whether or not the moratorium involved in the project or not, more about whether or not the parking is an extension of personal use. That's the issue I have. And the ordinance clearly states that it's supposed to be for retail or service use on the ground level. And it's for me, from my perspective, I would agree with Jim that it's an extension of residential use. So now the question becomes, do we wait to get a formal opinion from Jim on that or not? And I'd be willing to go either way on that. And then the question is, do they be allowed to fix that problem in a revised application? I don't know the answer to that either. I'm all ears in terms of an application. I think we absolutely need to get an idea whether or not I don't think it is.
City council had some awkward issues on timing recently about the moratorium. And what they chose to do was to actually call a special meeting a few days later after they got all the legal points of view understood. Maybe we should entertain doing the same thing. Special meeting on this and its path forward a few days from now after we get resolution on these issues. I want to respect the proposal as well and not slow it down unnecessarily. It sounds like we're on a precipice here that we need to be careful of. So.
Well, we have a motion and a second.
I can change my motion. I will change my motion. That proper?
Yes.
Okay. Change my motion to subject to receiving an opinion from attorney Jim Raymer, city attorney Jim Raymer. Just the this is actually for personal use, not for, it's not in accordance with the ordinance. Then no one did not.
So
Could you modify your motion
Just modify it for me.
to include both issues, including Garen's issue, that we need a legal opinion
Right.
on the record regarding the parking for residents on the first floor, knowing the precedent that may set. And the other is, are we clean on being able to pass judgment on this project given the current moratorium?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And, okay, so that's still your motion.
Yeah.
Okay, second. You want to second this motion?
Yeah, Jeannie, do you still
Yeah.
second the motion as amended? Right. Would you like a roll call on this?
Please.
Garen Goppigan,
Yes.
Chip Everest,
Yeah.
Kenny Stewart,
Yes.
Vanessa Warren,
Yes.
Jeannie Benjamin,
Yes.
Bob Buckner,
Yes.
Barry Lustgarten,
Yes.
Mark Finkelstein.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't want to make a motion, but I want a discussion as to whether you folks think we should call a special meeting essentially at some date sooner than a month from now. Point where we have opinions on these issues, so we can pass judgment, and it could be a deny, or it could be an accept, or it could be a postpone all over again, based on that information from legal counsel.
Can I provide some thoughts on that?
Yeah.
If you're choosing to have a special meeting, I might recommend that we don't set it too soon. We've identified what I see as 5 other issues that the applicant would need to address before we would be able to provide final review and offer a decision. If we're looking at tabling this, I think that we should keep an opportunity open for the applicant to submit further material to address the issues that we know need to be addressed. And to just not set the meeting so soon that if we have that meeting, we won't have that information available to be able to make a final determination.
Any other thoughts on this particular sub?
Okay, I think you can go on record. Yes.
I didn't know if you had it.
No, I'll let you do it.
Okay.
Okay.
He has a comment.
Oh, go.
Bob, just in regards to the application, consistent with what Jeff is saying. I'll give you 4 items that I've noted that you have concerns about, so the planning commission and the applicant are on the same page. First is a revision to the storm system, both for the proposed parcel and to incorporate the additional drainage from the Lyric roof. The other one is the articulation of the west wall.
Yes.
The third is the transparency issue on Gardner. And the fourth is a rooftop plan that shows the location or the proposed location for the rooftop elements. So we can make sure that they comply with the 42-inch requirement.
Right.
And they're outside of the view of the public right of way. Those are the 4 that I have. Do you have any other ones?
That's notwithstanding the issue of whether or not parking on the first.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
attorney's opinion.
I still have,
Fine.
Anybody have any other ones?
yes, I still have one, which is subservient to the legal opinion about any parking, residential parking on first floor. And that is, if it happens, it needs to be 1 parking spot per unit, if I'm interpreting the code correct.
It is.
Is that accurate, or because don't we have language that the CBD is exempt from the
Well,
parking
the
requirements?
CBD is exempt from parking. Okay,
Okay.
but a property owner, if they want to, can provide parking, but they don't have to.
Okay.
The 6 spaces are 1 per unit, and then there's 3 that's for the retail. Out of the 9,
I see.
okay?
Why are there 3 for retail?
Well, they have 9 parking spaces. They're required to have, if they want to provide parking for the residents, they have to provide 6 parking spaces. They had 3 left over. I just assumed they would be available to the retail or office, whatever goes in front of the
Are they
building.
allowed?
They can provide them. Otherwise, they can exempt, they could provide just the 6. Or they could provide no parking. And the entire first floor could be office or retail.
Okay, so this is good, but let me make sure I'm clear. So again, I was referring to this table. There's only 1 parking spot allowed per dwelling unit.
Cool.
But is that a requirement, or is that an option for the development?
It's an option because it's in the CBD, because
Okay.
they're exempt from having to provide parking at all.
Understood.
Yeah.
So my issue of parking goes away and it defers to the bigger issue, the legal issue.
That's, yes.
Okay.
John, can I just get one clarifying comment from you? When you say elements, I want that to mean rooftop elevator shaft and HVAC.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
it's the
Just so
whole,
long
it's
as,
the whole
including
thing.
both of them.
Correct.
Thanks.
The only other thing I had noted, John, that might need further direction is the lighting thing. There was the one, do they need to provide a new thing or is that so
Revised
minimal?
photometrics.
Photometric? Okay.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, it's small, but as long as we're making a list.
Okay, that's the 5.
All right. Is everybody comfortable? Let's move on to,
Are we voting or what are we doing?
We voted.
Okay.
We passed a motion to table.
So long ago.
let's move on to draft signage ordinance.
Oh, yeah. Hold, give me one quick second, folks.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, our ordinance.
That may be grandfathered.
All right, are we ready to talk about signage?
Yes.
Now that we've gotten the complicated stuff out of the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
So we presented this at the last meeting, gave you guys an opportunity to take it home, review. We did get some feedback, and so we've got some highlighted sections that were added that are new since the previous version. And I'm gonna hand this over to John so he can kind of walk us through.
The biggest, one of the bigger changes in the sign code from the last meeting was that Jeannie had suggested that we possibly include provisions regarding signage for chain stores or franchises. In the sign world, those are referred to as formula businesses. And the sign code can address specific standards for those level of businesses, and as a result, I added into the intent and purpose 3 other intents that talk about community character, visual environment, character of commercial areas within that context. And then there's a section in the ordinance specifically on formula businesses in terms of what their signage would consist of. And the one key factor is what percentage the planning commission wants to assign for any standardized graphic element that exceeds the total sign area, because a lot of franchises have their national logos or brands. So you have to kind of assign a percentage of how big you want that as part of the sign itself. But that's the new section, and then I went through and made the revisions based on feedback from the last meeting, and then Kenny had some other signs that he wanted to incorporate. Jeff and I looked through them. Some of the ones that he had, like drones, would be covered already because they're mechanical. But we did add gobo lights, which are the static or the lights are multicolored lights that would flash on a building. And then the searchlight, which probably goes back, the last time I saw them was like 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Where they had the lights in the big searchlights that would draw your attention to the business. That's kind of retro, but it may come back, so I put it in there.
Good.
So, those are the changes that we made. And then I guess what's open for discussion with the planning commission.
Well, I'll lead us off. So, good, you hit a lot of good, I think, things that are potential down the road. Do I understand this correctly, though, John, when you say formula businesses that in C1 are not substantially identical to those used at other locations? So I'm a franchise fast food restaurant. I cannot, with this verbiage, I cannot have my standard sign. Is that what I'm getting from this?
That's correct.
Okay, I could have a version of it.
Gonna have a version of it, but as long as it fits within the context of this ordinance.
Okay. My second question, thank you, is on projections. We talked about projections, but to this verbiage, it sounds like projected signs are different what I'm thinking. Where do we address visual projections from a computer, like something on a wall?
I think that's your Gobo light, right?
No, there's another one.
There's another one out there.
Can you describe a little bit more? I've got some things in this category.
Okay, I didn't see this and if I point you in the right direction, if it's in there, I'm thinking more of a sign that is, I don't know, it's a projection that I put my hand in front of the projector, it's gone. But it'll project a sign on a wall. Where do we hit that?
I think we cover that in our illumination section. We have language that states that signs cannot be self-illuminated with lights shining through them. And I would make the argument in my interpretation that the sign is the actual projector itself, and the projection on the wall is the shadow of the sign, which from the illumination from the sign, and therefore it's not permitted.
As long as you think we're in legally good standing that we've covered that issue, I'm comfortable. I just, in reading this, I didn't see anything that specifically addressed it, but I kind of get where you're coming from. If you can interpret it that way, and we've had precedent that says, yeah,
Be more specific in the language.
If we need to be more specific to specify that, we certainly can.
Then you put it on.
I think nice to be black and white, so we don't have someone trying to escape the issue.
We can expand some language in the illumination section if we need to.
Or if that's a real concern, then we'd also put it under the prohibited signs. So just be very clear that it's prohibited.
right, because I can see how a temporary, I have a sale and someone projecting on the wall of the First Community Bank. It's not a permanent sign and it's not really, I don't know, you could call it self-illuminated, but I wouldn't phrase it that way, so I think we need to address it.
We can do that.
Yeah, I agree, and let me just kind of build on that. As I was reading through this, I think we need to separate some titles and perhaps create a glossary of terms. Because we sort of intermix the phrase digital sign, information board, and display board. Depending on how you interpret it, they could be different things. In my mind, a digital sign is like the Rodrigo's sign, where the lights create the information. I realize that's illuminated, but that's one version. Information board, everybody has their own definition, but I see that as a lot like the homes for sale with the perimeter around the outside. But then there's also display board, which is like a menu posted outside one of our restaurants. And I just think we need to be very clear. And in one of the tables, it says digital signs are allowed in the CBD. And so depending what I think that is, we could have a Vernali's board panel being installed unless we argue in some of this language. So my action item here is that we need to separate these terms and define them. I think that will help now go a long way.
I think a key thing to keep in mind is, especially when we get into digital stuff, right? Because we can't look at content. So let me use a couple examples. The school has their digital sign out by the school with the LEDs or the stuff where they can change the message, right?
But they're not in the CBD.
They're not. They're also the school is the school, and to some extent they're exempt from zoning. So that's a sign that's not under our control. Our zoning would not have permitted that, but they can do what they want to do.
I'm specifically arguing about the CBD.
But the key factor though is that is a digital sign. And in the court's mind, there is no difference between that and a TV. Digital is digital, and then the only thing up from that is content. So, where communities used to be able to say, or tried to say, we'll allow a digital sign, but the message can only flash so many times per minute, or if it's a scrolling thing, it has to scroll at this speed. We don't have that control anymore. And so that's why we've basically said, and the idea of adding in the digital sign in the CBD was we know that one section of our signage, when we talk about the maximum percentage of window covering, may negatively affect some of the businesses downtown, namely real estate. There was the talk at the last meeting of what if we allow them to have a TV that could have some advertisement on that to take the place of the loss of that window space. And so that's why we added the language allowing a digital sign, which would essentially be a TV inside the thing, just inside the window, that would be able to provide them with some advertisement in place of. And so we had a specific size limitation proposed for that. If we don't like that idea and we would prefer to not allow any digital signs, we could take that back out.
Yeah, my opinion is we should take it out. We should not have TVs. And again, I'm focused on the CBD. And if some real estate places have too many signs covering too much of the window area, then ideally they should address that. And don't post 30 houses, don't post 20. And that would be my point of view in order to maintain our downtown area. But I yield to the group on these things. But did the two of you catch my point about digital signs, information board, display board? That to me is an action then. While I'm on a roll, could I do a couple other things?
Absolutely.
In section 1.1.11, which is about window signs.
Can you give me a line number, please?
No, I can't.
Okay, and I can
find it.
1.1.11.
We don't have any mention of.
Line 50 down.
Thank you. We don't have any mention of a storefront that chooses to cover their window space, like during the off season. And it's kind of, beginning to point a finger, and I don't mean to do that. But this was mentioned, I think, last month. And maybe we should address something like that because it violates the transparency issue that we just debated a little while ago. And so if you're off season, put a sign up, but you can't cover the windows like 1950 showrooms. So.
I think that might be better covered in the zoning code as opposed to, because I think that might not be considered signage. The see you next summer portion, certainly, but some of them just paper over the whole window, and I don't know that would be considered signage. So I think that might be something that would be better covered in this zoning code.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that at the later portion of the.
I think that's a good idea. I've got a biggie here. It's a typo. 1.1.13, which is line 320. Right of way.
What line was it?
Line 3.
Line 320.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, and I agree with Mark's point of view that we have to be a little clearer on what we do not allow. And I know I was harping on this before, but a drone could hold a sign, stationary location, and somebody could argue that that's okay because it's not moving and it's not in the way of anybody. And I just think we need to come out and say, because there's no drone ordinance as I know of for the city. There may be, but I don't think there is. So that would be one. And laugh at me if you wish, but a robotic something could hold a sign, not move, be on the sidewalk, not block people. And then an hour later, it could motor its way over to the other end of their property, turn around and see that. these goofy ideas could be allowed if somebody wanted to argue in favor. And I just think of being clear, we should just say no drones, no robotic devices, and not fall back on the mechanical definition. Because the mechanical definition talks about, you know, like motors that would make moving parts to attract your eye, and that's different than the modern devices that we have.
Well, let's discount the robot portion of that for a brief second and just look at the sign portion of that. I think that that would be a temporary sign, and it would need to meet the definitions that we have in our temporary sign section of the code.
Okay.
And if we look at that, we can do that. I think.
What if they aren't doing this temporarily, but they do all the time?
No, okay, yeah. Well, we can add some language to it, yeah.
It's just a little more ink, and then I think we'll be clear. Those are the biggies, because thank you for addressing the go-go lights and a stationary searchlight. I know it's an old idea, but I just want to be.
They were cool in my days.
Yeah, that's right. I don't mean the twirly things that they always had in Detroit all the time, but I mean, just one beam stationary, it would violate all sorts of, you know, dark sky standards. But if it's not moving, somebody could make an argument that, hey, I'm okay. It's temporary, it's good. So I think we should put some language in there.
Oh, yes, searchlight. Sure.
Okay. Okay, that's it. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Thank you for that, Kenny.
I have one more.
Go ahead, I do too.
So wall signs, so obviously I would protect the realtors, but also like the Lyric. So according to the wall sign, the Lyric can only have one billboard for a movie. Right now they have 4 on the wall. Would this eliminate 3 of them by having this in place?
I think we have a section for message boards, and I think that might be the most appropriate section for that. But again, that is limited to 1.
It's showing
Like
their
it.
product.
Making all these changes and we're doing things that are kind of taken away from what the city is. The realtors, you grab ice cream, you look at the realtor signs, you have the billboards for the Lyric. I think we're just making all these changes for something that hasn't been used yet that we're investigating.
No, that's true. And, you know, I think for the most part, there are minimal changes to what was there before. We're coming up with these thoughts and ideas and concerns that existed under the old signage ordinance as well. There was nothing in the old signage ordinance that allowed the Lyric Theater to have those posters up either. So we certainly have issues that don't necessarily fall in that we're not correcting with this, but we're also not making it worse. So, but you are pointing out some concerns that, do we want to address it and say that a building of that, with that much linear footage or something, can have that many signs, knowing that that would apply to other businesses that have that linear footage as well?
Barry, to your point, I want to give the Lyric a chance to post all their movies. Is you talked about product. If you post a picture of your product, such as the real estate company showing all those homes for sale, aren't they posting 4 different products that are movies that they're offering?
No, that's the thing is, because it's not the product itself, it's now an advertisement as opposed to a display of good,
I see.
right?
Okay. So if they had the real Tom Hanks sitting in a box, that would be okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, discriminate over one business over the other.
That's the key. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
what makes this so complicated is that what's good for one has got to be good for everyone. Yeah. And so there are exceptions that you want to make, but the minute you make those exceptions, then everybody can capitalize on that. Anyone else? I've got a few.
Some quick questions. Sandwich boards, are those, can they just be chalkboards? What limitations do sandwich boards have?
What limitations would you like them to have, knowing that we probably have to stick to talking about construction materials as opposed to content? We could say chalkboards aren't permitted, I think. That would be because we're referring to a material of the product.
To the um,
Formula business.
Yes. So would a sandwich board with a formula business sign on it be outlawed because it's a formula business?
I think we should spend some time talking about the formula business stuff. I like I think the idea has merit, and I certainly see the concern and the want in the community. But I also see a lot of businesses that we already have in the community that would be heavily affected by this. So I think we should really debate whether we want this or not, knowing how many businesses are already in town would be affected by it. Right? So I'm looking at this, any chain business, so BC Pizza, Johann's, most of the realtors, some of the clothing stores, Kilwins would all be negatively affected and would need to consider, or we have to consider that we would be saying at some point in the future when they need to repair or replace their sign, they would have to modify and change their sign so it was not in keeping with their chain store. And it sounds like we can do that, but I think we should make sure that we have a discussion to really determine whether that's appropriate to do, knowing how many businesses it would affect and the repercussions or the responses we could get for that. So just let's have a discussion.
Yep, you're kind of reading my mind. That was one of the things that I had concerns about is there a way to really gauge from the business community, particularly as it relates to CBDs, but also, you know, the other business zones, what kind of consequences these kind of changes might have on them and what their reaction to that would be. It would be kind of good to know that before we impose restrictions on them that they might find oppressive. I don't know whether we did an open house, didn't we? But we didn't really say, here's what we're talking about, as opposed to what is in play today. It might make some sense to have an open house with the business community, or a couple of open houses with the business community, when we get close to having a final document that says, here are the biggest changes. You guys in the business community, how does this affect you, and are you okay with it? And what kind of perhaps compromises should we be considering in order to make this palatable to you guys? You know, I take your point entirely on the real estate side, and yeah, I mean, but problem is Mark points out, you know, it's gotta be the same for everyone.
No, I get that for sure.
Yeah.
Could we utilize the chamber or DDA or some other organization to help gather?
I'm all ears, whatever we think is the right way to go about doing it, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't try and gauge what kind of impact this is gonna have on the business community.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's my point. I want some feedback from the people to impact.
Yeah.
And that's one struggle we've always had is we don't really have the business represented here. Like, they don't come in and move.
Yeah, well,
Just
I do have a couple of other nits and nats if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Okay, line 18, you're missing the word that. Go back. To preserve a distinctive visual environment contributes. I think you need that contributes. Okay, the table on beginning at line 187. Okay, so what I did it, and I did this the last time too, is went back and checked all of the subtables against this. So line 187, the mobile home park is not on table. Line 187, the mobile home park is not on table 131. So you've got mobile home park for whatever the table is on 130.
Freestanding, they should be.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, similarly, John, line 256. B1 and B2 is missing. Either it should be on there or it shouldn't be on the table on line 131.
Yeah.
And this, the same can be said for line 306, B2 is missing. That's all I had, and by and large, I think I'm pretty comfortable with the way the signage ordinance reads right now. I think the litmus test for me is gonna be you know, what the community feels might be the negative consequences of the result. Other comments? Anyone in the audience have a comment? Yes. You want me to? Yeah, please.
Karen Outfield, West Travis Township. I was thinking that since it's hard to get the business owners and operators here. If the planning commission were to ask each business to send in screenshots in a single email of their signs with maybe a definition of what signage is, then you would all have them to participate. Because you would be saying, you know, we're doing something with signage, what kind of signs you have, and that way you're not only educating them at the same time as you're asking for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Procedurally, Jeff, we need to have a vote on this or anything? I think what I hear the planning commission saying is there are some nits and gnats that need to be incorporated. Perhaps we just review it again and after another draft. And then maybe formulate a plan to try and either use what Karen has recommended or a combination of that and open houses to see how the business community is going to react.
Yeah, I think it would be a great idea to have another set of 1 or 2 or 3 open houses to try and get more feedback from the businesses, especially now that we have some language that we could discuss with them. So I would recommend that we set some type of a time period of when we would have some open houses, get the feedback from those open houses, bring that back to one last meeting of the planning commission where we can make some of these edits that have been brought up tonight, plus the feedback we get there. Have that review, make some further modifications, and then potentially at that time, if we feel we're ready, schedule a public hearing to have kind of a start that final review process.
Yeah, sounds good. Jeannie, you're the only representative. Is the upcoming high season going to be problematic for businesses to attend open house?
Potentially, and I might, potentially. And then I just had one other quick question as far as and I need to read again what you put in. I think that if Karen wants to read again about what makes it charming downtown, I think little by little, we are finding more and more formula shops moving in. And I think that we need to stay with a master plan that says we are a small charming town. I'm well aware that I work for Dave McLaughlin and I'm a formula business. I don't put up their signs. So perhaps one sign is fine, but perhaps 3 in the windows, the sandwich board and their sign is too much. So maybe we need, fine to have one to say who you are. But other than that, we don't need any more than that. We know who you are. So if that could be said somehow in the ordinance that we bring forward to people to talk, so it doesn't leave it so wide open, we at least are following a master plan of some sort.
I'm just gonna speak on behalf of the retailer, since I talk to them every single day. I think with a meeting at any season, it has to be earlier. They open their stores, they need to be there by 9:30. So an early meeting would be great, and then a later meeting, because their stores close by 5:30. But, and the DDA, speaking on behalf of the DDA on this one, but it is, we can go out and let everyone know how important this is. That they have to be in the know.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think, Jeff, with the preliminary open houses that we had, we were trying to accommodate that. We had an early meeting and then like a 3:30 meeting or something like that.
I did one that was right around lunch-ish and then one that was in the evening, but doing one, I think, first thing in the morning, as much as I hate mornings, we can make sure that we get that done. Something like would 8 o'clock be something that might, okay. Yeah, I think we can do that. And then timing, you know, obviously July is extremely busy. August is still busy. are we comfortable holding off on having these open houses until late August? Or do we feel like we want to have more progress by that point on signage?
One man's opinion, I mean, first off, the most important thing is to get it right, so if it means delaying until late August, I think we should do that, and in the meantime, we've got some things we gotta clean up, and we've gotta make sure we're comfortable with the language in the ordinance, so I think that that's what we ought to target, when it's gonna be most convenient for the businesses.
I agree.
Okay,
John, Jeff, you don't see any, I don't see any negative to waiting, right? Is there any downside to that? I agree with Chair Buckner. We need to get it right, but why are we rushing?
I think Jeff and I have both mentioned. There's not a lot of significant change from the current, the old zoning code. We just reformatted it to be easier to read and find the information. But you're still gonna have to consider things like the formula business. Basically, the way it's set up now is if a formula business comes to town, the way that this is set up, it says it's gotta comply with the current standards in the ordinance. They can't come in with their standard signage package. It's gotta conform to what the local community requirements are. With the exception that we have to specify the percentage of their logo as part of their sign. Because, for example, McDonald's, they have the big M, that's, then they have McDonald's under it, so the formula business concept is that you're basically getting them to conform with your signage and material requirements, so they just don't come in and want to install their traditional signage package. Other than that, I think we can clean the other parts of it up, but to get to your point, this is not pressing, The city of Petoskey's been working on their sign code for 3 years. I've told them many times, if anybody needs to serve in purgatory, join the sign committee. Okay, because it just keeps on going and going and going, but we're very close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're working this through, and I agree with our timing.
Yeah.
But are there standards in place that can protect the basic?
yeah, when we adopted our new zoning ordinance, we kept a provision that maintained the existing signage language from the old ordinance is still in effect.
So there's
So-
not a blank piece of
There's
paper.
not a.
Right, we have working orders to guide us in the meantime. And I don't see anything pressing that needs immediate fixing in the meantime, so I think we're.
So we move on to C, Cobalt presentation.
I assure you it wasn't anything you said. In passing, if I may, my name is Bill Brown, 251 East Main Street. The signage on real estate I find rather conflicting in my mind. We talk about that's how we sell our product. When was the last time you walked by a real estate office in town and saw one for sale? They all say sold. That's not advertising your business. That's not advertising something for sale. That's just eye pollution. That's just an observation. Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is a presentation regarding a study. We've got Will St. Armor. I believe he's online and ready to join us. And I'm hopefully going to be able to. Will, do you want me to share the screen so that you can do a presentation, or I think I have
If you-
information as well.
Yeah, if you go ahead and share it that way, as my mouse moves around, people can see what I'm pointing at. And at the moment, I'm unable to share.
I just made you a co-host.
Perfect.
You have to stop sharing.
Oh, thank you, Carter.
Well, thank you, everybody. My name is William St. Amor. I'm the Executive Director of Cobalt Community Research. We're a nonprofit located over in Lansing, and we work with communities across the United States on surveys and this kind of visitor tracking report as well. So we did 2 reports for you. We did one for downtown, and then we did another one for the city overall. covering the period from April 1st, 2025 to March 31st of 2026. So I'm just going to briefly go over the reports to orient you to what's in there and give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you have. These are things that take a little bit of time to digest. So if you do have questions, definitely let me know and we'll either answer them right away or I can go back and I can get the answers for you. So starting with the downtown report, what we do is we work with the city to create the polygon that we looked at. So during that period, we saw 1.26 million visitors in downtown. We graphed that out by day and by month. You can see that your spike is in July, and the time that you have the least number of visits would be November 2025. One of the things that we look at is where folks were in the downtown area, and that's what these little individual dots represent. So you can see the concentration of visitors. And we also show that as a heat map, if that's something that you'd prefer, but the two maps, the one with the dots and the one with the heat map, are showing the same kind of information. One of the other elements that's included with this are the places that people went before and after going into the place of interest. So before they were downtown or after they were downtown, 2 hours before or 2 hours after, where else were they? And you can see that about 34% of your visitors were at home and about 27% were at work. And then you can see the breakdown of these other locations by address in terms of where folks were and where they went afterwards. You can see a lot of gas stations. You can see McDonald's, a number of locations along those lines. Golf course received a pretty fair amount of traffic. Another element that we look at is the routes that people took to get to downtown. So red showing the more heavily trafficked routes, blue being the lesser trafficked routes. So we offer that information in a number of different elevations. So you can see it fairly close in here, and then we zoom out to give you a couple of different views in terms of the routes that people took to get to your downtown. Home locations. So you can see these dots indicating the zip codes from which people came. And again, a couple of elevations to give you a sense of what that looks like for you guys in terms of your reach. So you can see certainly a significant reach in the Midwest, but also a lot of representation in the Eastern United States and a little bit off to the west. This particular graph is showing your trade area. So this is 80% of your visits. Where do they come from? And this maps that out for you. And then the zip codes. These are the top 25 zip codes from which people came. Most of them being Michigan, but you see a few Ohio's popping in, and even Kentucky. And then looking at the distance that people traveled to get to your downtown. You can see that this 101 to 250 mile was a significant spike. Looking at the hours that they visit, the peak time is right around 2:00 p.m. How long people stay? So you can see that there were, most people stayed approximately 5 to 14 minutes. And then you can see that Pareto chart going down, but then another spike at 150 minutes or more. This is a useful chart when you're thinking about communication about things to do downtown. One of the things we've seen a number of clients do with this is really strengthen the visibility of other things they can do downtown while they're there, highlighting stores, cross-marketing, working with the store owners and store staff so that they're educating visitors as they come in so that they know what else there is to do downtown. The loyal versus casual, this is the number of visits in the time frame. So people who are the casual, these are the people that came in only one time during the study period, so about 67%. And then about 33% came more than one time during the study period. And then this chart below is giving you more detail in terms of how that breakdown looks. And again, this is a nice baseline because as you're looking at communications and letting folks know what other events are coming up, this is an opportunity to stretch out the number of return visits. Daily visits, so visits by day. Saturday is definitely your number one day, and Monday being your least popular day. Then we start getting into population segments in the trade area. So this is one that can cause a little bit of confusion. Essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the census blocks of your visitors compared to the county overall. So if we're looking at things like ethnicity, what was the ethnicity of the home locations of the people that came to your downtown compared to the county overall. And we do the county just to give you a sense of how it varies. You can see that these red bars and these blue bars on the far right hand side. This is giving you a sense of how far above or below the county are you seeing with your particular visit pattern. So if we're looking at something like American Indian population, it's a small percentage, but it's a bit fewer than you would expect with the county overall. So you can drop down and you can see those individual breakdowns as well. Age, similar kind of setup, comparing the age of the folks in your market area by those census block groups compared to the county overall. You can see that you tend to draw in much more of a younger crowd. One thing that I do like to point out with this is that for people under age 18, these are extrapolated, so we don't actually track minors. So this is just coming straight from census to give you a sense of the traffic pattern. More demographics, looking at the household income of your visitors, they tend to trend toward the more affluent groups. And then looking at the educational attainment, you can see some differences there. Then we can get into occupation, looking at the various types of work that people do. Are they white collar? Are they blue collar? Are they in the service industries? And then getting into specific industries as well. You can see what that breakdown looks like. Then getting into the psychographics, and this is based on the taxonomy of Esri. And what they do is they take a lot of information from demographics, a lot of marketing studies, online behavior, and credit card purchasing behavior. They take all of that data and they lump it together into a number of different cohorts, different avatars or types of clients, types of customers. And so this is looking at what are the top avatars, the top psychographic segments for your visitors compared to the county overall. And this is particularly useful because you can go in, these are standardized, you can look it up on Google or wherever else, and you can look at what are savvy savvy suburbanites in the tapestry model. And that will give you a lot of information regarding what they look like. So there's pictures so that you can see what they look like. And as you're putting together your outreach information, you can use pictures that look like the folks that you're trying to reach so that it resonates more effectively with them. It'll tell you what are their values so that you can make sure that you're building key communication points, key talking points, key messages that resonate more with what they're interested in. And also you can look at which particular communication channels they prefer so that you can tailor those as well when you're trying to reach each of these individual groups. We do have a summary of the information that's available on our website, so you can go out and look at that. But as I said, there's a lot of information out there in the internet. These are standardized marketing groups that you can take a look at. So that's really what we have in the information for each of your reports. For the city overall, it's a similar kind of thing. So same period, looking at the number of visits, it was 1.64 million. And then we have some breakdowns of what that looks like. The average number of visits was about 3.09. We have the breakdown by days, the breakdown by month. And again, you can see July 2025 is again your peak, and November is the lowest point in terms of your visitor traffic. We can see from a citywide perspective, where do people tend to cluster? And then again, scrolling down, we can see that on a heat map. We can look at where people were before and after they came to the city. And then again, we can see what the routes were that people took to get there. Very similar to the downtown, since the downtown is one of the heavily visited areas of the city. So they tend to be pretty similar. Looking at home locations, again, at the different elevations, we can see what that looks like. And then sliding down, looking at your trade area, very similar, a little bit different in terms of some of these little spikes that come up to pick up the 80%. But really the shape is very, very similar to what we saw with the downtown. Looking at the top 25 zip codes. Sometimes we see these spikes out of state, and often that is because of people who may have moved or a company that's moved. It takes about 6 months for a cell phone to reorient to a new zip code. So sometimes when you see these strange things, either there's a great big group of people who came to visit you, or there's a group of folks that have moved and the cell phone indices just haven't caught up yet in that 6-month period. Looking at the travel distance, again, we have a number of folks from that 100-mile and out range. Looking at the visits by hour, so shifted a little bit, just an hour later in the afternoon to your high point at 3 o'clock for the city overall. And looking at how long visits lasted, again, you can see what that looks like. So there were a larger number of folks at the 5 to 14 minute. And then looking at the people who visited once, more than once, and the breakdown of what that looks like. Looking at the most popular day, again, Saturday being the largest, only instead of Monday being the lowest, it's now Sunday being the lowest. And then getting into the population segments, again, this is looking at your trade area. So all of those individual census block groups. So we add up the population of all of those to get this value compared to the county. But you can see, again, what that looks like in terms of ethnicity, in terms of age, in terms of household income, educational attainment, occupation, and the industries that folks work in. And then going to the psychographic, you can see that there's a little bit of shifting. So not quite as many people that popped up on the county comparison, but you can see what those individual groups are that are the most largely represented for visitors to the city overall. So that was a quick tour of what's in the report. Are there specific questions that you would like me to answer?
Will, this is interesting. I don't have a question, but just an observation. We go back.
Yeah.
To page 13, please, of either deck, whether it's the city or the downtown. They both say about the same thing, but it just struck me as interesting. We always talk about how there's been so much development from the Chicago residents, yet there isn't all that much going on in that region versus Michigan. It seems, I thought Chicago would be a heavier dotted area, but that's okay. It's just what it is.
And it would be interesting to go back a few years to see if it's changed. So it may be that this is actually an improvement over what it was before. You do have a lot of folks coming in from Indianapolis, and that's a pretty interesting cluster down here.
Yes. Maybe I'm a little bit of a dig nerd like Mr. Stewart, but well, this is kind of cool, but this is all based on mobile phone, if I understood your data correctly. Mobile phone usage, so what percent of undercount is there? Because people that don't have a phone or have their phones off are not counted, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And you
So
that to be what percent?
the percentage, I don't know offhand for this particular project, but what we do to calibrate is we look at the road counts in the area that we're examining. So we look at what is the average daily traffic. We look at a year's worth of traffic, and then we use the software that we use to count the pings, and we look to see what percentage of pings are spotted in comparison to the average daily traffic. And then we use that as a ratio, kind of the ground truthing, to then take the observed devices we see in downtown or the city overall and develop the estimated number of total visits. So we do that ground calibration, which should wash out a lot of that information. What would be missed would be some skewing in terms of the types of visitors. So the overall count wouldn't be that skewed, but if you had a disproportionate number of people with graduate degrees turning off their phones, for example, compared to folks with lower levels of education, you could have those kind of skews, but typically they're not huge. And this data, I'm the first one to say it's not perfect data, but one of the key uses of it is setting this as a baseline and then using the same methodology to do a recheck a year from now and then seeing how the numbers moved. So while the numbers aren't perfect, the imperfections are held as consistent as possible so you can have accurate comparisons from year 1 to year 2, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Well,
Other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a question. So how does this study take into consideration? So for instance, I myself, I live in Petoskey, I work in Harbor Springs.
Yep.
Or someone that lives in Harbor Springs but works in Petoskey. When I come and go, or when they come and go for work purposes, when their cell phone enters the city, is it counting that as a visit?
It
Or
is. In this particular study, it is. Yep, we broke that down. So it's counting all visitors, whether it's workers or residents or people who are completely out of town. It counted all those, but only one time per day. So if you went back and forth across the city line 5 times in a given day, it would still only count you as one.
just curious, wanted to be able to take that into consideration. So
Yep, that's an important consideration because visitors and workers are different kinds of visits.
Then Will, you said that you don't take data from children. How does it work if you're a family of 4? I know kids now in elementary school have cell phones. How does that work coming into town? How does that data get counted?
Yeah, it depends on the particular provider. So let me give you a little bit of background in terms of the data collection. So it comes from a number of different sources. Your cell phone is one in terms of the pings off a tower. Also, the individual apps on your phone often are collecting location data as well. Every time you click, I agree. This is the kind of data that they're collecting and submitting up to the cloud. The other source would be vehicle GPS data. So those are the big 3. In the app data, there are sometimes there's requirements to put in the date of birth, which is sometimes a bit sketchy depending on what it is and who it is that's using it. But there are also patterns that are used where they can tell this is a juvenile pattern compared to an adult pattern. So all of those they go into the algorithm that the data aggregators use to then strip out all of the data from folks that they know or suspect of being minors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
PC members, any other questions? I think we're good.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Maggie Lacy, 315 East 3rd. I'm also on the DDA board. I guess my question is, do you put this information of other towns on your site that you can view? Or
We do not.
Okay.
No, we share it with you. If there's a client of ours that you're interested in seeing, we can ask them if they're willing to share it, but we don't just publish it
Right.
without permission.
So I guess my question is what do we want to do with this information? Do we want to know, of course, we saw that July is really high for our town, where a lot of times I think people are thinking it's all 3 months and it's only July. So can we manage that? Do we need more parking or paid parking? We don't, because it's only July. I think all of us can really deal with it. But then, going forward economically or being developed, how do we compare to another town like New Buffalo, which if you look at the tax bracket and the population size, we are kind of the same. Are they pulling a lot more from Chicago and a smaller radius, or are we unique? I guess I would like to try to figure out where do we fit and where do we want to go with Harbor Springs? Because we keep on saying we want to keep churn, but what does that mean? Because we're having an aging population, we're turning, and where are we pulling? Because it looks like we're pulling more so from the Bloomfield Hills, locally, the people that help our economy as a state. And so, you know, as you said, we're not coming from Chicago. We're not really being expanded. We're not being exploited. But that's why I wanted to know, is there another town that, you know, when you saw our information, did you kind of go, oh, we're unique, or are we like every other town in Michigan?
You're not like every other town in Michigan. Most of the time, what we're seeing with other towns is it is a much more localized pattern, whereas you've got a lot of metropolitan clusters, which is different. Your pattern actually reminds me more of an event kind of pattern. So if there's a large a Ren Fair kind of thing, where it tends to pattern off the major metropolitans. Could also be a factor. I don't know what kind of outreach you do about this with the city to reach different groups, but it could reflect where the outreach efforts, your advertising and so on is showing up as well. So those are a couple of considerations. As far as other communities like New Buffalo, we haven't worked with New Buffalo directly. With this service, if there's a place that you want to look at, you're not restricted about looking at other locations if you wanted to have a report that looked at that. Or you could also talk to the folks in New Buffalo and say, you know, you'll share yours if they share theirs. And I would not be at all surprised if they were completely comfortable doing that kind of thing.
For Williams, 355 East Bay Street. So looking at the data, I think is relevant to the planning commission. So the middle of the summer were 5 times the amount of people here. So what that sort of tells you is the downtown area has the capacity to surge to 5x what we see in the winter. That would suggest we don't need more infrastructure. We don't need more stores. We don't need more physical development. We have the capacity to handle 5 times the normal load. From an economic development standpoint, it opens up another comment. So there's sort of 4 groups of people that are in this data. Tier 1 in terms of economic development. Tier 1 are people of repeat visitors, destination resorters, highest economic strata, most able to pay, most likely spending the most amount of money. They represent, I think, about 21% of the people in this category. There's a second tier, which does probably provide some money. That's a one-time destination tourist. That's 67% of the numbers here are people that come here once, one period of time. They might be here they're here for more than, I think, 20 minutes. So they're here for some longer period of time. But 67% of the people that we're seeing are in and never come back again. Then you've got the locals and the workers that I think represent, they're the 21%. So those are obvious infrastructure, obviously required, obviously all that from an economic development standpoint. And then we've got about 16% that are here for a brief, quick moment. So what does that all mean? What it suggests is that if you're trying to figure out what we should be planning for, we should be planning for how do you get the people who are frequent repeat visitors to show up during the off season. And it also suggests that you should work hard not to have the quick hits. The quick hits use your bathrooms, they throw garbage around, they don't deliver any economic value. They probably have a return on investment on them. That 67% of the people probably have a negative economic impact on the town. Because we're building out infrastructure for people who are here and leave. So from a standpoint, this is consistent with the master plan. We want to have people, we want to have a town that's oriented around the people who have property here or spend a durable amount of time here. From an economic development standpoint, it would say encourage the bigger blue dots downstate to maybe come here through advertising, to come here in the fall or the spring. They already have homes here. They don't tax the infrastructure or anything more. And to actively probably push away people in the 67% category that all they do is draw economic drain on the town and make it more difficult. I don't know if is he still on? I don't know if those are consistent with your thoughts, but that's my assessment of the data.
I am still on, and the question I would have is with the 67%, what kind of economic stimulus do they provide, even though it's for a short duration? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Ultimately, that's your question. I can't say it is or it isn't, but I think that's an excellent question to dig into more deeply. They might give you a whole year's worth of juice, or they might not.
Will, if you'd go back to that heat map screen again, or the other one that was similar to that. One thing that I thought was interesting, and city council recently had the farmers market was in, and they were talking about that, and they provided some type of report about how much money was spent at the farmers market. And I noticed that on the heat map, a significant portion of the people coming to downtown was in that farmers market area. So I think that that aligns with how much money is being spent in downtown related to that farmers market thing. I just saw the combination of those two things as you know.
So the only thing I would offer as a comment in response to your thoughts, Carter, by and large, I am in agreement with you. One of the things that we used to use this data all the time to generate sales forecasting systems for our clients, Home Depot, a lot of major retail clients. Sometimes drawing the conclusion that we don't need more infrastructure because we're handling whatever that the figure was. It could be that we're not handling people very efficiently, and so people aren't coming. And we used to see that all the time with Home Depot. You'd have a $80 million Home Depot store, and we put a store 3 miles away, and there'd be some cannibalization on that store, but that would come back again because the store was doing a horrible job of efficiently serving customers. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's also a possibility, is that we may be so busy in the summertime that people just don't come here because it's just a pain in the neck. All right, anything else? Great. Let's move on to item D, potential zoning code revisions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
My
Will.
pleasure.
We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
So, planning commission, how do we want to, and John, if you've got a suggestion, how do we want to tackle this? I think we all have ideas for zoning code revisions and what we'd like to see. We can just kind of do a brain dump, or do you have a suggested procedure?
Well, I'll ask the question. It's 7:30.
Yeah.
You want to keep going, or do you want to keep going? Or the other question would be, I think probably some people have ideas. It'd be nice if everybody kind of provided a list of all of their suggestions.
I like that.
So Jeff and I could go through and kind of put them all together.
I like
The only
that.
issue is that the moratorium clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And maybe get some sort of framework around what the ideas could look like or not, would help.
I have a question, and I'm not techy enough to know the answer to this at all. But given AI today and how you can run things through, which I don't know how to do, can we take the master plan and our current zoning code and see where the holes are? Because I feel like the building that was brought before us doesn't fit in. I mean, I feel like there's a disconnect someplace in this. So where do we find the holes easily rather than all of us bursting out what we think?
I can run the master plan against the zoning code and ask AI to tell me where there's deficiencies. But I will tell you, based on the city council meeting, when you considered the moratorium, I watched part of the meeting. Someone got up, I can't remember who it was, and they said that small town character is mentioned 20 times in the zone, in the master plan. The deficiency there, Jeannie, is when the master plan was authored, no one put in the master plan a definition of what Harbor Springs definition is for small town character. So, Karen got up and read this 3-paragraph about what small town character is. You do not find that in the master plan. The word small town character is used 20 or 30 times, but there's no description of what small town character means, because like when Karen got up and read it, it's a very broad perspective, and I'll run the master plan through with the zoning code, but I don't know what it's really going to tell me, because there's really nothing definitive in the master plan that says this is who and what we are in terms of a definition. But I'll run them through. It'd be interesting to see what the results are.
I would like to see that,
Yeah.
and I also think, and to your point, I understand what you're saying. And there are some things you can't put into words. I mean, there are some things that just seem obvious, but you can't find words to describe them. And so I think that there are certain characters in town that speak to who we are without saying it. You can't put it to words. There are certain things that somebody brought up to me and said, you know, would you rather sit on a wooden park bench or a plastic park bench? So we create that feel on its own.
I get that, and I would suggest the next time you update the master plan, if you do a community survey without making a large community survey, but all you have to do is ask people in a survey, in 50 words or less, write down your definition of harbor, what small town character means to Harbor Springs. And then when you get back all those open responses, then you can run that through AI and it'll create a list of common themes. And then you incorporate that into the master plan. So when you review a development, there is something in the master plan that says, this is who we are. And you can evaluate that against the proposal. Because I did go into the master plan and look for a definition of small town character, especially in the way the ordinance is set up, where it says that the development should be harmonious with the character of the community. The master plan's got some lofty policies in it, but it didn't have enough definition that I could fall back on and say, this is inconsistent. So, I just think that I'll run it through. I think it'd be interesting, the master plan and zoning code. But I'm just pointing out the next time you update the plan, the master plan, you don't think you have to ask the community a bunch of questions, but you just need to ask them a couple very, very, very specific ones. And one would be, I've seen it in surveys before. In one word, define Harbor Springs. Or in 30 words, define Harbor Springs. And then when you look at that in the aggregate, then you can actually create a verbal definition of what the community is that you can use then to evaluate against development proposals.
And along with that, so I understand, thank you. Can we look into, or would anybody oppose us looking into a historical overlay for the CBD? And I know it takes time, I get all of that, but I think that would be something that would be important.
Well, I do think I do think it's important. The difference between, I'm not comparing Harbor to Petoskey, but from a zoning point of view, their downtown is already on the National Register District. Okay, it's already recognized by the state and federal government as a historic area. That's a process that you can go through. Once you have that, you can create the overlay that says anything in this area has to meet these guidelines.
Correct.
And then it's golden.
Right,
Because if the CBD here had that
right. So
designation, then you could refer to the Secretary of Interior guidelines to evaluate the architecture and the mass and the bulk of the building.
correct. Can we look into that so that, I know it takes time, but I think it would be a direction we might want to go.
I can give you a memo that outlines that process. Okay,
Okay,
and that's gonna require a survey by a pre-qualified history or historic preservationist that's pre-qualified by the state, which is there's a list of them. But it's something that the city council is gonna have to allocate funding for to do the survey that would be recognized by the state and federal government.
and there was something in our zoning in 1988 that established a historic council of some sort. Is that anything that is still active? Or is no longer?
That I have no idea of. That I have no idea, but when you wanna do the survey to qualify an area as a designated area, a lot of communities will activate like a historic advisory commission
Right.
of people that have that background
Yes,
that will help do that survey.
okay,
So council's gotta do a couple things. One, allocate the funds. You gotta hire a pre-qualified consultant and then maybe have an advisory board of citizens that can provide the input.
okay.
But if you'd like, I can put that in a formal memo for the next planning commission.
If everybody's okay with that, I would appreciate that.
We're looking at, yeah, sure, is there an easier way to do it?
No, that's the way that you have to do it. And what I'll do is I'll contact SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, to get an idea relative to the size of your CBD, what they feel the consultant cost would be, so I can try to give you a budget item too.
Thank you.
Okay,
Jeannie, as a suggestion, one way that we might take on this, a direction that we might take is John does all that, we take a look. It then becomes in the form of a recommendation to city council that we think the city should move forward and do this. Because that would be the city council's decision, not ours, as to
Right.
whether we pursue it or not.
right.
I just didn't want to speak for everybody, yes.
But having said that, this is obviously something that's gonna take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so I think we would be well advised to, for want of a better description, come up with Band-Aids to, to amend the ordinances as appropriate to address some, I mean, I put together a list of things, and I like your idea of us, providing you with our thoughts on what's important. I'm mindful of Kip's concern in terms of the timing, the clock is ticking. Do you think that if we were to provide our thoughts to you, that you could consolidate them and come back to us with a recommendation at the next planning commission in terms of the types of items that we would like to incorporate into the ordinance to perhaps protect against, for me, the issue is bulk. I mean, you look at some of the buildings that have been developed that, seem to be out of character with Harbor Springs. It is just the mass of the building itself. So what can be done to prevent that? I think that would be a great first step. But how do the rest of the members of the planning commission feel about that?
Well, I like that. I think we should also welcome comments from the public too.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, that's a good idea.
Got 90-day.
Yeah, so we have a 90-day moratorium.
You can't turn the crank on public information, fill that down, revise the zoning code in 60 days.
But we could put some provision in there that would do to what Chair Buckner's saying, would stem big problems.
I think we have to.
Yeah, from our standpoint, not from the public.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying never.
You're talking about the public.
Right, I'm not saying don't listen to the public, what I'm saying is just the practicality, it took us 1.5 years with public input.
Yeah.
To get where we are, and so maybe what we do is what was recommended earlier. Is we get our ideas to them.
Yeah.
Consolidate a list, and then I would be interested to say, kind of the question of how could this be stated? This issue that I have. And where would that be stated? And you're not proposing specific language, but you're saying that these kinds of elements would have to change, or something like that would guide us on how we could eventually change the language.
Okay, that's how I think we should proceed, and not to take anything away from Chip's concern about getting public input. I think would be very valuable, but we don't have the luxury of time, so I think we start with.
No, I mean, I'm not talking about a formal request from public input. I'm saying we are where we are today.
Yeah.
With a better code than we did before because of public input.
Yeah.
And so why not, accept public input? I mean, we don't solicit it, but if he comes in, we take it.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, no, totally agree, and we should be the liaison for some of that, if the public has recommendations that they'd like to offer. Take advantage of the planning commission members, and we'll try to incorporate that into our thinking.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
we've got this 90-day window of the moratorium. My suggestion would be, why doesn't the planning commission individually send your comments or your concerns about what you want to see in the CBD relative to bulk height stories to Jeff? And do that within the next week, and then Jeff and I can prepare an ordinance amendment for just that issue that you can get in front of the PC next month. Have a public hearing and get public input on it.
Yeah.
In order to, because we got this moratorium that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Some of these other issues in the ordinance that need to be tweaked, they're not that you know,
Yeah.
they just don't have that, the
Urgency.
the urgency and priority that we're
Yes.
looking at right now. So that would be my suggestion is, you know, by the end of next week, get to Jeff what your concerns are. And then him and I we can draft that portion of the ordinance for you next
I think
meeting.
that's an excellent suggestion. I mean, the elephant in the room is,
Elephant in the room is stories, height and bulk.
yeah, and CBD. And
Setbacks.
CBD, yeah,
And what?
and the central business.
And CBD.
Yeah, and
And
the
the
CBD.
CBD.
I mean, the moratorium is for buildings in the CBD.
That's right.
That's the thing that we want to address
Yeah.
first.
Height, stories and bulk. And I just need,
Setbacks. Can we do anything about not going sidewalk to sidewalk? I get it bulk, but
No,
keep it.
I think you,
Get-
that should
get-
be in your
yeah,
recommendation.
in your recommendations.
If I can throw out a thought here, so on your setback topic, Jeannie, in our 2024 code, we had language that if someone was going to have a third floor, that it would need to be set back 8 feet from the property line. So we allowed first floor, second floor to be right up to the property line, like we have in town. But then the third floor would have to be set back 8 feet. And the idea there was if you were on that side of the sidewalk looking up, you wouldn't be able to see that third floor. And that might affect the massing to help bring that down, or if that's not what you're looking at, or. But if that's something that we want to think about bringing back into the code again.
Big road, Jeannie, to respond to your comment about setbacks, I think everything is on the table. I think if you feel like that's an important issue, you should definitely mention.
And I need to even, well, I'll read it.
Yeah, right there.
Thank you.
Is the moratorium, is it, number of floors and feet and more feet, or is it and, or what is it?
So the way that the moratorium was worded is we are no longer, at this point in time, until the 90 days are done, we are no longer accepting any applications for a project within the central business district that would exceed 2 stories or 30 feet. It's either. Yeah.
Planning Commission, how do we feel about that? Are we prepared to commit to get this information to Jeff?
You probably gave some very suggestions.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want the top 5? I mean, is it easier? Should we prioritize so you don't have to we're all on the same page for the most part?
Full list.
Let it fly.
Yeah, let it fly. And then let's talk about timing. So we'll bring this to the July Planning Commission meeting. We'll take all of your feedback. We'll draft something up. We'll have some sample language of what it will look like. At that point in July, when you review it, maybe you talk about it, make some changes. We then could schedule a public hearing for August. And then at the August meeting, unless there's further changes that you would like to make, that would be when you could potentially then make a recommendation to City Council to adopt those changes. And that would fit within our 90-day window, right?
It's their 90-day window right now.
Well, correct, right? That would provide us the opportunity. So we are kind of limited on our time. And we do need to keep that in thought, that we don't want to cut off and say, let's push this off to the next meeting. We want to make sure we discuss
So
it.
when was the meeting? The next 90 days?
Yeah.
September the 15th or September 4th or something?
Well,
I'd have
June
to,
4th is when they actually adopted it, so I assume it's 90 days from June
So
4th.
September 4th-ish.
Am I missing something?
No, there's something on
We have to post-
paper,
We have to post it in the paper for.
Well,
That's X number of days after.
I think it is stated that it takes effect immediately, but that it does require to be posted. But before I give you an answer, I want to talk with Jim and verify, make sure what that date is. Yeah.
Oops. The thing I just might point out, Jim will tell you, you may need 2 public meetings, in which case you've got 20 days notice on a public meeting, so you might have 2 instances between you doing a public meeting and then the city council doing a public meeting, so you should include that in your time.
There's a 15-day requirement to.
But it's still a legal requirement at this point.
Thank you.
Yep.
Wow.
Planning Commission, anything else on this topic?
Yeah, I think also, I know we need to put a Band-Aid on this and get it stopped, but we do need to really figure out that master plan to be able to make decisions going forward, and I think we'll try to make all these and scramble, make all these decisions without really having a master plan in place, so I think that's something that we need to kind of get on at some point soon.
We do have a master plan.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
How does that be refreshed?
It's best practice to every 5 or so years to at least give it a review. We are approaching the time where it would be a good idea to open up the master plan, at least look at our goals and objectives and see if those need to be updated or if they're still good. My recommendation is we have a couple other housekeeping things like getting through the signage ordinance. Once we do a few of those, we bring the master plan back on to at least review it and see what needs to be updated and what is still good.
You know, it's just kind of going back to what John was saying, as far as defining what we consider, what we think Harbor Springs is.
I think that's the great benefit that we got from the Cobalt review that we saw today, is that's some really good demographic information that we can take into consideration when looking at our master plan.
All right, let's move on to Eddie. Chair Buckner, before we do, so we come up with a date by which we have to send this data to Jeff. Yeah,
But
This Friday, it's a week from this Friday.
How about not this Friday, but the following Friday? And then I can collate it all on that Friday and give it to John so that he has the opportunity to put it together for our following next week.
6th.
Yes.
Sure.
And the next week. Item 5, member comments, anything? Please.
Just real quick, and maybe this is going to come into play when we do the master plan. So when I was really diving into the drainage and the requirements. So the requirements they're using is county. And it is a 5-year storm in sandy soils. It's countywide. It's very antiquated. And I just implore the city to maybe do better. I guess when I looked at the drainage in the first place, I think I even mentioned this to folks, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. And then I found the equation that they were using. And there's not many 5-year storms anymore. All storms are 100, sometimes even more. And we don't have the mechanism to keep up with it environmentally. And right now, we in many communities in this county are falling back on that equation. It's an equation that is based on the soils, not the soils that have been built on, not the spoils. It's just sandy soils. And it is not even what impervious is there now. It's all the new impervious. So what about that old impervious number? And this is all that has to do with retention. And it's important for our system because our storm, we don't take our pipes anywhere. We have glorified French drains. So the water goes in and it seeps naturally. So
question, Vanessa, where are those standards and how would we get after recommending a revision?
well, I mean, that would be at a county level, but we can be proactive and do something of our
You
own.
have your own
It'll
story.
be more restricted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just tell you that some of the communities I work with, when they say you have to retain all of the water, we use 100-year storm back to back. That means they have to prove to us what the runoff is for a 100-year storm, and they have to double it.
So would that be in our zoning code eventually? Okay.
Yeah.
What's in there right now that would restrict bulk type building that is creating much more impervious area than
Right, but,
currently exists?
right, so you see what we're saying is that like right now, they can look at this equation and they only have to look at the square footage that they're adding. They don't look at the existing square footage that's already there. So like that 3,000 square footage that's already there, they really don't have to consider it. But it's odd because it's all impervious. And so I don't know. I have 3 structures that I could hit with a stone from my front door, and I can tell you it takes a long time for that water to go down on those structures.
So it sounds like another action item for us after signage. after
Yeah,
this
maybe,
plan
and you guys are
is-
saving us
is to
to get off
revise-
this thing and we don't have to.
But
especially when you talk about the trees on the streets and we depend on this water and we depend on this water to be clean and just maybe something.
Okay.
Not past you, Art.
No, not at all.
Thanks for that, suggestion.
That's an action item for us.
Others? Then I propose we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you all.